Don Yaeger, welcome to the Mindset Advantage podcast. You're somebody that has been on my list for a long time as somebody that I've wanted to have on the show. I think we have a ton in common. I'm so excited for this conversation today. Thank you for being here.
DJ, thank you so much, man. I got to tell you, it's fun to be in the presence of like-minded people that want to grow, and I know that's who you are and where you're going. So I love it. I can't wait to participate.
So you've spent a long time interviewing some legends, John Wooden, Nick Saban, Pat Summitt, Michael Jordan, so many more. I'm so curious to start in all those conversations. What's one moment that jumps out that made you stop in your tracks and made you think, man, this is what greatness really looks like?
Mm. I'll give you one, but it's probably not the one you might expect. But it's a story, and you and I talked about sharing some stories. Um, because greatness sometimes is limited to the field. It feels like oh we they're the greatest running back, they're the greatest whatever. I think greatness should be pervasive in everything that you live, and that's really what greatness is to me. And maybe one of the best examples I ever saw of that was with a running back by the name of Warwick Dunn. Warwick was grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. His mother was a police officer. He's graduating from high school, picking a college. He and his mother pick Florida State, where he's going to go and play for Bobby Bowden. And a couple of weeks later, he gets a phone call, and it's the police calling to tell him that his mother has been shot and killed in a robbery at a bank. And suddenly, he's 18. He's the man of the house. Got five younger brothers and sisters. And Coach Bowden actually called him, said, "Hey, what's happened has changed, obviously, the direction of your life. If you don't want to come to Tallahassee, we understand. If you want to stay in Baton Rouge, maybe play at LSU, no problem." Warwick said, "You know what? My mother and I picked Florida. We picked playing for you. We picked that together, and I'm never going to dishonor her. I'll see you there this summer, but I'm going to need a slightly larger apartment." Right? Which he did because he brought his younger brothers and sisters with him to put them through elementary and middle school while he played college football, which is amazing. He goes on, has a stellar career at Florida State, helps him win a national championship, finishes the all-time leading rusher in the history of the school, gets drafted in the first round by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And when he does, he starts a charity. He starts buying homes for women like his mom, single moms. They just passed their 270th home, just was purchased a couple of weeks ago, which is just fantastic. He over 600 kids woke up in a house today that they got to call their own because of Warwick and his charity. He wins the NFL Man of the Year award, the Walter Payton Award, which is meaningful to me because of my relationship with Walter. Wins the Man of the Year award, gets a chance to write a book, asked me to help him, and in the process of doing that, I asked him a question about what he would say if he could ever go eye to eye with the man that killed his mom. And he wasn't ready for the question, left my office, came back a couple days later, handed me a notebook with several with pages of questions that he thought about what he would say if he could ever go into a conversation with that man. As it happened, another friend of mine called from Louisiana. We were talking. I told him about Warwick leaving the office. My friend said, "You know what? It's interesting you asked him that question. You should know this." He sends me this article that in Louisiana, there's a law that if you're the victim of a crime that leads the perpetrator to death row, you're the victim, perpetrator's on death row, and you fill out certain paperwork, the Louisiana Department of Corrections will expedite a meeting between victim and inmate. So Warwick hands me the questions. I reach around, I hand him the article, and I said, "Look at this, Warwick. You could go ask those questions if you wanted to." Whoa, Warwick said, I'm not ready for that. He turns around and leaves again. But he comes back 3 days later and he says, "Let's go to Louisiana. I want to ask the questions." We sent in the notice to the Louisiana Department of Corrections. Took 6 months, as I joke all the time. That's expedited in Louisiana. But we end up 6 months later going to the prison. Warwick, myself, and his high school coach to death row to meet the man that killed his mom. Most fantastic, most amazing hour I've ever spent in my life. We get into the cell. The man starts this whole new story. He's lying about he wasn't even there that night. And after half an hour, Warwick Dunn held up his hand and he said, "Sir, if you weren't there that night, let me tell you what that night did to me." And he proceeds to tell him how he used to dream about being a father, he used to dream about being a husband. And now he can barely even figure out how to hold his girlfriend's hand in public because he doesn't want to fall in love with her because he can only lose love once in a lifetime. And at that stage, he starts crying, and the inmate starts crying, and I'm crying, and the coach is crying, the lawyers are crying. And he says, "By the way, if you weren't there that night, I don't know why you're here today, but I came here today to forgive somebody." And I will tell you, I've spent a lifetime in the presence of people doing amazing things, and I'll never experience another championship moment like that. Like that is the greatest moment I think you could, because Warwick became a living example for me of what I'll tell you is one of the most important characteristics of any great champion, and that's that they know that adversity is promised to all of us. What you do with it is what makes you special. And work proved right then through forgiveness. It's not a moment that I expected, right? It's not a moment I knew to be prepared for. I'm not sure it was a moment he knew he was going to actually live until it happened. But we got out of the prison and I looked at and the warden actually looked at Warwick and said, "Hey, we're going to execute this guy one day. And when we do, you'll be invited." You know, many victims want to come to that moment to experience it. Warwick shook his head, said, "No, thank you." He said, "Because as of this moment, because I've forgiven him, he holds no power over me
Wow.
any longer." And when I think of like what it means to be great, when I think about what it means to like witness a moment and see something, I mean, there's a lot of things that happen on fields, but moments like that, um, they've changed me. Warwick changed me. Really powerful.
What a powerful story. What a way to start this conversation. When I think about some of the best athletes in the world, I think they're the people that know themselves the best. And when I'm working with an athlete one on one down in the mental performance realm, that's the first thing I do is to try to understand who they are, how they want to be remembered at the end of life, and what are kind of your first principles, what really matters to you.
Mhm.
And sometimes the athletes I work with, high school and college, they haven't thought about this before. But the ones that truly know themselves on a deeper level, I always say that, the outer game really starts with the inner game. The better you know yourself, the better you can perform. And so what I'm kind of hearing from you and too, and another kind of theme here with Warwick was that he knew himself really well. He knew what was important to him. Some would say he knew his why and his purpose. Would you say that that's another theme for the greats is that they know why they're doing what they're doing and who they are?
Without question. And I think they don't just know who they are. They appreciate the responsibility that comes with who they are.
Mhm.
You know, I laugh all the time. I've known Charles Barkley forever, and you may or may not remember that he did a commercial years ago in which he said, "I'm not a role model," right? You should be the role model. Parents, you should be the role model. Teachers, don't make your kids look at me and look at me for being a role model. The truth is, Charles knows he's a role model, but it was a Nike commercial, and Nike was convincing him to say it. And that's a challenge, right? Sometimes athletes struggle with that idea. Like, am I am I properly equipped to be somebody for someone else? The best embrace that. Like they're ready for that. They want that. Um, and it shapes who they are on a day-to-day basis.
What have you seen from studying the greats on being able to separate their identity from who they are? We see this a lot where when sports are over, sometimes we see some depression, suicide rates. I mean, with the Olympians on and on and on, Michael Phelps talked about it during his career, after his career. What have you seen from the best? Any strategies that would be noticeable or effective for my athletes and coaches listening to help them separate what they do from who they are?
So first, let's acknowledge that it's human nature for that to be the case, right? My wife gave me a hard time. I retired from Sports Illustrated a number of years ago, right? But for a full year after I retired, my voicemail still said, "Hey, you've reached Don Yaeger from Sports Illustrated," because I didn't want to change it. being at Sports Illustrated, even though I voluntarily walked away from the magazine as part of an early retirement package, I struggled because it was part of who I was. I had grown into that role and it meant so much to me. I didn't want to lose it. And so that's an important recognition here is that it's human nature. So don't think you're bad because you're struggling with it, right? I think that's important. But I think secondly, you're right. The best ultimately get to a place where they recognize that there is a future beyond sports. And it's interesting. I did a lot of work with NFL teams in the pre-draft work that was being done. And one of the things they're looking for when they ask you, like, what do you want to do after football? What they want is for you to say nothing. Like all I care about is football because that's what the team thinks they need. If you immediately say, well, yeah, I want to go back and go to law school, that actually notches you down in their vision of you because what they want is someone that's obsessed with the sport and success. But there is a window, there is a time at some stage in everyone's career when you have to start thinking about that next thing. And the best time to think about the next thing, frankly, is in some latter stage of the current thing. And so I think that that's important. I don't know that you should enter anything that you're doing with an immediate plan for the next. I think that actually costs you your ability to be present in what you're doing. But I do think as you begin to progress, you start thinking, what's next?
You went through 2,500 plus interviews, and we have these traits, we have so many. I could talk to you for hours, Don, but I want to hear what were some of the top two traits. You have 16 of them. Maybe let's go with maybe number one or number two. And then I'd also love to hear about one that's a little bit more underrated. What doesn't get talked about a lot, but when you found it, you were kind of like, aha. Let's break down a couple.
Sure. So the number one trait among the best in the world that I had the chance to work with, the number one trait was they have learned at some stage in their life to hate losing more than they love winning. And we've heard that phrase, but they mean it. Like they mean it. Like losing leaves a mark, and it can be at anything, right? It could be at tiddlywinks. Losing leaves a mark, and the best. Just are immediately looking uh, to to reconcile that loss, like to come back and do something else. Um, Average and really good players, they've been athletes have been, like they'll justify a loss. They'll come, oh, well, the referee wasn't giving us our calls. The court was wet. Whatever, right? The best, they don't make excuses. They hate it. They hate it. And the real key to doing that, to achieving that, is taking excuses off the table, like not allowing yourself to make excuses when things don't come and go as you expect. The second one that came up was that every great one that I've worked with, every great one, this one's almost universal, will tell you that they understood they were only as good as the people they surrounded themselves with. And that wasn't just on the court or in the field. That was at home. That was in relationships. That was in business deals, right? You're only as good as the people you put around you. And so those were two that totally made sense. And they've actually, uh, both of those things have become more and more important to me as I have worked harder and harder to achieve my own level of success, right? Whatever that might look like. And so those are two. Um, I think I think one of the ones that really stood out to me as a as interesting and not was that the almost all of them, because we think of athletes or we think of many people of high success, of thinking of themselves as the center of the universe, right? The world revolves around me because I'm awesome. The truly great ones actually have a sense of 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 they have a concept that they are in fact not that, that in fact the universe is bigger than them, and that there is, for many of them, some kind of a higher power, right? Whether that's a religious figure, whether that's whatever it might be, but there's something out there that allows them to kind of be able to put in perspective some of what they're going through. And I think that's really important and a challenge for some. But it's a but whether it would and again, I'm not suggesting it's my faith or your faith. It's literally just a recognition that there's something out there bigger than them.
I wonder if that has to do kind of tapping into like I think some of the best athletes in the world, they have really good perspective on things, right? So a one loss isn't the biggest deal in the world. They have really great perspective, and sometimes call it God, call it faith, call it religion, but just having call it an outlet can offer some sort of perspective for athletes when you
No
talk about
question.
a little bit more of the mindset side of things.
No question. I don't think there's any doubt about that. That is, Tony Dungy, who's an enormous man of faith, and I have had great conversations around this. And one of the things he says is, that if I didn't have faith, some of the things that have happened to me, I would never be able to reconcile. But because I have faith, I'm not trying to reconcile them, right? Which allows you to kind of let some things go. And that's what, as when you get to mindset, that's one of the things that really matters.
I would love if you could tell another story from either trait one or trait two. So I love winning, I hate losing, or the power of your inner circle. You talk about you can't outwork your inner circle. I think that's a great quote. Could we pick out one of your favorite stories from trait one or trait two?
So I do a trait one story, and it's the story I tell when I speak on this subject, um, and it has to do with this guy named Michael Jordan. Jordan does an old man basketball camp every year in Las Vegas. He invites 100 old guys who love the game. I actually love basketball so much. I have a full basketball court at my house here in Tallahassee, where I live, and invites 100 old guys, divides the team of 10, brings in 20 great coaches, and their job is to coach us for 4 days as we compete against each other. First couple days, you play basketball all day long, sit in the bar all night long, tell each other how great you used to be, because that's what we all love to do, right? The older you are, the greater you used to be. And I'm old, so I was great. Just ask me. And but then on day three, you get there in the morning and you're all stretching on the floor, and Jordan walks in and says, "Hey, today we're going to do something different. Today I'm going to give 20 of you the opportunity to go one on one with the greatest of all time." Taps himself on the chest, right? How awesome would that be, right? Tap yourself, call yourself the greatest. No one argues. That's
No one
awesome,
argues.
right? And he said the rules are simple. My assistant will explain them. His assistant steps in. She says, "Yep, rules are simple. Today, each of you who he chooses, the 20 that he chooses, will get a chance to go one on one with Michael, and you play a game to one. First guy to score wins. But Michael always starts with the ball." She said, "Your job is to guard Michael." She puts it in air quotes, like, which is insulting. "Your job is to guard Michael. If somehow he doesn't score and you get the rebound, Michael guards you. First guy to score wins." Jordan steps up, says, "By the way, I've done this for 9 years, and in 9 years, 5 guys have scored on me. And today there won't be a sixth." As if he needs the help, now he's in your head, right? Guy two in front of me. So I'm one of the 20 that he picks. I'm number 12. Guy two in front of me goes out to guard Jordan, throws an elbow at him. Jordan just like does a ball swipe, knocks his elbow away. The guy actually steps on his own toe, falls to the ground. Jordan, one dribble, two steps, thunder dunk, pulls the ball out, chucks it on him as he's laying on the ground. And he said, "Now you know what it's like to be spanked like a bad child." Right? It's the greatest trash talk. He's such a great trash talker. So 2 guys later, I step out and I decide one thing I'm not going to let him do is dunk on me. So I actually back up. I'm going to give him space, but he's not going to be able to get to the rim without going through me. Actually, Krzyzewski came up later. He was one of the coaches, and he said, "Yaeger, you were so far away from him. If you'd wanted to go guard him, you'd had to take a cab, right?" Um, so Jordan, there's actually this great picture. Jordan's actually got the ball in his left hand, and with his right hand, he's calling me out. And he looks at me and he goes, "Are you really going to give me this shot?" And I looked back at Michael Jordan and I said, "I don't think you have it in you." 100-old guy started laughing, right? And Jordan then shakes his head, goes up, takes his shot, and misses. Ball goes wide left. I get the rebound. Now I've got it outside the 3-point line. He's stepping out to guard me. As he is, I look back and I said, "Michael, aren't you going to return the favor? Like, let me, like, give me the same distance." And he goes, "No, man, I know you don't have that shot in you." And as he stepped up, I stepped back, and from 26 feet, became the sixth guy to ever score on Michael Jordan, right, at this event. But the coolest part about the story is that what happened a couple days later, we're at the closing event, and Jordan and I end up in a conversation, and he's still trash talking me. Like, he keeps asking for a rematch. He wants to play again. I'm like, "Dude, you had your shot, right? No rematch." Um, and so we get there, and he says, "But," I said, "Michael, why are you so competitive? Like, where does that mindset come from?" And he said, "You know what? It started when he was 15 years old." He tells me the story. He was sophomore in high school, Wilmington, North Carolina, trying out for the varsity basketball team. Gets cut, as we all know, and he goes home that night. He's crying, and he tells his mother, "I was the better player." His mother said, "You know what, son? Don't let it bother you. The other guy that got the slot that you didn't get was 6'7". You're only 5'11". And Jordan said this was a moment in his life. It changed his life. He said he looked at his mother and said, "You know, Mom, I'm not going to spend my life blaming circumstances for things that I don't get. Um, that's not going to be who I am." He said he went out the next morning, 4 a.m., started shooting baskets because he was going to make that coach regret that decision one day. When Jordan gets inducted in the Hall of Fame, one of the tickets that he uses is for the 6'7" kid that beat him out for the team when he was a sophomore, right? He wanted that kid in the audience while he's going to the Hall of Fame. And he made the point to me. He says, "By the way, I was able to achieve those things because I hated losing so much." In fact, for many years, when Jordan checked into hotels, he checked in under the name of the 6'7" kid that beat him out for the team as a sophomore,
For what reason?
just because it reminded, like, he wanted to hold it to his, that pissed
Wow.
losing pissed him off that much.
Wow.
He wanted to hold on to it forever. It's
Mhm.
really amazing.
What
So,
I'm hearing that a key distinction I don't want listeners to miss though is I love to win, I hate to lose. But what the key distinction for me, Don, is the complete and absolute and radical ownership that goes with it. That's really the underlying lesson is that even if I do lose, it's not a pity party. I'm not pouting.
I'm not blaming somebody.
I'm not blaming.
I'm
There's no
not making an
complaining.
excuse.
That's right. That's the difference right there is
Right.
yeah, I hate to lose, but when I do, I will take a complete ownership of what just
Yep.
happened.
No question. Yep.
I want to talk a little bit about coaches. I'm in a series on my podcast right now called Coaching Beyond the Scoreboard. I'm interviewing about 10 Division One coaches across the country in a variety of sports, talking about what it means to coach beyond the scoreboard.
Mm.
And really what I found is the number one thing that stops coaches from coaching beyond the scoreboard and having a transformational impact is that they're too attached to the outcome. They're too attached to the scoreboard. They're too attached to things that they can't control. And so we really talk a lot about this idea of process over outcome, focusing on the process, having systems, languages, habits, awards, everything is process driven.
Look at
I
all of them.
got
It's John Wooden, Nick Saban. All the ones that are very process driven are the most successful of all time.
perfect leads me right into I would love to hear a story about a time where you stumbled upon a coach who really took this to heart because it seems like the best coaches that I'm interviewing, they all have this down, yet there's still a lot of coaches out there that are still super outcome focused. So I would love to know if there's a story that you could tell that really exemplifies process over outcome from some of the greatest coaches that you've been around.
Mhm. So I had the opportunity. I spent 12 years with John Wooden. Every other month for 12 years, I flew to California to spend a day with Coach Wooden. He served as a mentor to me. Um, and if there was anybody that was process over outcome, it was John Wooden. John, to the point where he would run practices, basketball practices with varsity athletes, best players in the world, without a basketball. what he'd want is to understand. He wanted you to practice going up for a shot, elbow in, all the right things that you're supposed to do. How do you leave the ground? How do you land? He said if you inject a ball into the process in that situation, then everybody's focused on whether the ball goes in or not.
That's right.
He goes, and then you lose the capacity to focus on what was your posture, where was your elbow when you clearly released the ball based upon. So Coach Wooden was so great at this concept that he would run practices or run drills without basketballs to teach basketball skills. And I love that. And I thought when I think of the concept of what you're describing, that's where I go. I think of Coach Wooden and what he taught me in that space, and it was very very simple. Like and if you start to realize as he taught players how to tie their shoes. We all know that story, right? But the reason he taught them how to put their socks on, was because, as he pointed out, the little details are what matter, right? For too many of us, all we want to do is we want to worry about, did we score? Did the ball go in? Did we win? As he said, the reason we focus on the bottom of your foot and the sock and the way you make, because if you don't rub your bottom of your foot and make sure your sock is smooth, there could be a wrinkle there. And if you get a wrinkle at the pace you're running practice, you're going to develop a blister. If you develop a blister, you're not going to practice. If you don't practice, you don't play. If you don't play, we don't win, right? So how you rub the bottom of your foot plays a role in how successful we get to be as an organization. And so I think John Wooden's pretty masterful in that space.
Yeah, you've been around him, or we're around him for a long time. I haven't had anybody on the podcast in 7 years down that has been around John Wooden. So I got to ask a follow up. What's another lesson? What's the greatest lesson that Coach Wooden taught you?
So one of the things he talked to me about was, remember we talked about the importance of the people that you surround yourself with. So Coach Wooden was mentoring me on this subject. And so one day, we go to this little breakfast place that he loves to eat, and he's talking to me about this subject. He says, "Okay, we're going to meet here again tomorrow morning. We're going to spend the day together. We're going to meet here again tomorrow morning, but I'm going to give you an assignment for tonight, and I want you to think about it." And he takes out a sheet of paper, draws two lines down the sheet of paper. In the first column, he says, "Name for me the five people you spend the most time with in your professional life. Like, not the people you wish to spend time with, the people you spend time with." Middle column, who are those five people in your personal life that you spend time? And then in the third column, five people in some other social setting, whether it's it could be church, it could be Kiwanis Club, it could be whatever, right? But what he said was he wanted you to list five people in each column. That was my challenge. And then I was to sit and look at those five names and ask myself, name by name, are they going where I'm going? Do they have the same vision for themselves or for me that I have for me? Or are they maybe more of an anchor around my neck? Are they someone that's actually dragging me down? And he says, as you go name by name, if you come across somebody that's not headed where you're headed, you need to strike it from the list and replace them with someone else, because that circle of people that you are surrounding yourself will determine your future. And I just loved it when Coach Wooden. I did, and now I make that. Many people spend New Year's Eve doing some kind of resolution of some kind. I look at my list. I'm working on my list every New Year's Eve in honor of John Wooden. I think about who I have in each one of those categories.
What a great exercise. Coaches, parents, everybody listening in, everybody can do that sheet of paper, five
Yep.
people in each area of your life. Make a decision. Are they with you? Are they with you? Are they somebody you want to be like? Or
Are
are
they
they somebody?
supporting you? Are they encouraging of the places you're attempting to go? Or are they constantly, knocking you back, right? Are they constantly making? I mean, I'll be honest. I'm a member of. I have a sibling of mine that I took off my list
Sure.
because I recognized that I was being, I was losing energy every time I was in conversation there.
I want to get your thoughts on this. Again, been interviewing a lot of people for 7.5 years about what makes a great team and talking about teams and coaches. And what I'm finding is a lot of different people have a lot of different opinions. What I mean by that is great teams have this, some have this. Everybody likes each other. Not everybody has to like each other. They have a lot of different, and rightfully so. I would say not every team is the same. It's what's so great about sport is every year we have new teams and dynamics. There's a lot of novelty when it comes from team to team. What I've really found is to not to oversimplify it, Don, but I think the best teams are the ones that are full of the best teammates. And so when I talk about when I think about what it takes to make a great team, there are a lot of things that are outside of your control. I'm big in focusing on what you can control. And so for me, when I'm speaking with teams, instead of focusing on things that are outside of our control when it comes to being a great team, let's focus on what we can control. And the only thing we can control is ourselves. And so I kind of bring that to the point of the best way for us to be the best team is for you to be the best teammate. What are your thoughts on that being in this world for as long as you have, writing about teammates and teams? What do you think about that concept?
I love it. I think it's actually I've never quite put it in that same context, but I could certainly see how valuable that would be. And again, it's interesting because being a great teammate's a hard thing. Everybody
Mm.
thinks it's like, oh gosh, aw shucks, right? No big deal. Would just be great. No, you got to be willing to cheer for other people when they take the shot you wished you were taking, right? You have to be able to celebrate. Folks, you have to feel for them if they are, if they're suffering in some way. That You have to be willing to do things other people don't want to do, right? Take offensive fouls or dive for loose balls. Nobody wants to do that. That's painful. But the best teammates are willing to do the things others won't do. And we say all the time, if you become a great enough teammate, you can become invaluable without ever being most valuable. You don't have to be the best player to be invaluable to your team, if you're willing to become a servant leader to others. And so, yeah, I've never put it the way you put it, but I would agree with you that I think that if you can collect a group of people who are willing to do that for each other, it would be helpful if a few of them were really good. But your chances of success are far greater if you put people in relationship with each other who can do that.
So my $1 million question would be, how can my coaches
Wait,
listening?
do
A
I have to
lot
pay 1 million or do I get 1 million?
of you'll have a check in the mail. It's coming.
Okay.
Don't worry,
Yeah.
Don.
Yeah.
My $1 million question would be: we have a lot of coaches that tune into the show, especially after doing the Coaching Beyond the Scoreboard series. My $1 million question would be: how can coaches create an environment where it is about we over me? It's about being the best teammate you can be. Do you have an example or a story of a coach who does this at a really high level? Because that's when we're cooking, when the coach creates the environment where this is the expectation, this is normal, this is the culture.
Well, one of the things that we all want is to be celebrated, right? Most people want to be celebrated. So, what are you as coach celebrating? So if you're celebrating the people who are scoring all the time or who are doing all, or are you celebrating the kid who stood on the top step of the dugout and high-fived everybody every time they came in, even though he didn't get a chance to play, right? If you celebrate, what you celebrate generally is reflected then over time within the culture of the organization because people want to be celebrated, right? So if all you talk about is, yeah, boy, that was really awesome, that Jimmy stood up and, with two strikes, he was able to kind of show the discipline, fouled off three balls, and hit that line drive that scored the winning run. Good job, Jimmy, we love that. Or do you talk about Sammy, who's down there, who didn't get a chance to play today, but who never once complained, who was always part of the chatter right out of the dugout. Um, you know, Celebrate great teammate behaviors, and you'll see more of it.
Can you tell our listeners about David Ross?
Just one of my favorite people on the planet. David, for those who don't know him, was a catcher in the major leagues for 15 years. But for 13 of those years, he was a backup, right? He got a chance to be a starter for a short period, lost his job in Cincinnati, actually got cut from the team Even though he was the starter, he got cut from the team because he was a bad teammate. He became in a starting role, he became so obsessed with his own statistics, his own performance, that he was more interested in what he needed numerically than what the team needed to be successful. Gets another opportunity to play, and this time when he does, he realizes he actually says to his own children, "I'm never going to let anybody call me a bad teammate again." And as a result, he ends up in this. He ends up getting a chance in Atlanta to play for the Braves, backup catcher again. But he opens up the whiteboard in the Braves dugout, Braves training complex, and he starts asking everybody who comes by, DJ, tell me about the best teammate you ever had. Give me 3 words to describe the best teammate you ever had and why. What made those 3 words resonate for you? And he built a list for himself
Hmm.
of the habits of what it meant to be a great teammate. And then he posted that list on the wall of his locker. And for the next 4 years, every day before he left the locker room, he went through the list and committed himself, I will be those things today. The list became so important that they actually took it off of his locker. They posted it in the runway that comes from the locker room to the dugout, right in the stadium, so that every player would look at it and think about, hey, what do I have to do today to be a better teammate for others? The end result was he went from a guy that got cut from being a bad teammate to 4 years later, he's a free agent, and half the teams in baseball are in line to sign up a backup catcher because he was now known to make the locker room better. Um, he goes to Boston, wins a World Series for the Red Sox. He's a backup catcher, but he starts all 4 wins in the World Series. He goes to Chicago, wins a second World Series. But in that last game, it's the seventh game of the World Series. It's the last game of his professional career. He had declared it earlier in the year that he was going to retire. He hits a home run in the last game of in his last at bat in Major League Baseball. And when the game is over, the Cubs just won the World Series, first time in the 108 years. When the game is over, media are interviewing him on the field, and right in the middle of his answer on national TV, his teammates come over and they lift him on their shoulders and they carry him from the field. The backup catcher got carried from the field, not because he was the best player, not because he won the game for them, but because he made others better. Great teammates have that impact. Great teammates can make that kind of. David and I wrote a book together that's actually being made into a movie. It's pretty exciting.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
When does that due to come out?
They're gonna start filming it this fall, so it'll be out probably a year after that. I don't know.
Amazing.
Who
Oh,
knows?
I
Yeah.
can't wait. This show's called The Mindset Advantage, and I work on the mental game with athletes, Don. And you know what I love about your work is out of all the different traits and the books and everything you write about, there's really nothing to do with the physical component. Now, is the physical component important? Absolutely. We
Like I
need the
said,
talent.
yeah, you want all these great teammates, but boy, it'd be nice to have a few of them be really damn good.
100%. I was working with my speech coach the other day about on creating a keynote here, and one of the things he stumbled upon was he said, "You know what's funny? He knows a lot about celebrities and books, autobiographies." He goes, "It's interesting that of all the autobiographies and the books out there from celebrities that used to play in major leagues, Serena Williams, Kobe Bryant, so on and so forth. There's not a lot of books about, hey, this is how to hit a forehand shot. This is how to hit a 3-point shot. All the books are about relationships." The mental game,
Yep.
work ethic, grit, so on and so forth. So it is interesting for both of us to stumble upon how sometimes we're so obsessed with the talent and the X's and O's. And again, there is a place for it. But more times than not, the book that gets read after the career has nothing to do with the X's and the O's. So
Correct.
I would love to just double down one more time on everything you've learned from whether it's an athlete or a coach or a team. What's one more piece on how the elite think? One more mental skill drill, one more piece of that bucket.
So I think it plays into a question you asked earlier as well. I think the very best um, are, in fact, thinking about legacy, but their legacy they're thinking about is not, I want to own the scoring record forever, right? Because almost everybody, I mean, look, everybody thought for years Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record would never be passed because who could play that long? Well, damn, LeBron James, right? Everybody thought Wayne Gretzky's number would never get passed. Well, then along comes Ovi. So, um, if your if your worth is rooted in a number, in a statistic, you're going to lose your worth. How do you feel about that? So the great ones are thinking legacy, but they're thinking it in terms of what can I leave behind? And it's not just, it can't be a statistic. It can't be jersey sales. It can't be whatever, right? It's got to be impact. And so the great ones find a window of time in their journey when they start thinking impact because it's also easier to begin establishing impact while you've still got a platform, right? You're 10 years out of the league or you're 10 years past your prime. It's harder to create the impact you can create while you're playing. So as you make your way through your career, look for that opportunity to start imagining impact.
When I think of impact, I gotta go to the Swen Nader story and the impact that he had. Would you mind telling that before we go into the book, the new book?
Well, he just, so Coach Wooden, said to me, we would talk all the time about different players. He said, well, you need to know. He said to me this line about the importance of your circle, right? Who do you put in your circle? And he said, if you need to know a story, you need to know the story of Swen Nader. He said, here was a guy that was, and I was thinking, wow, why do I need Swen Nader? Like, who the hell knows who Swen Nader is, right? He was a backup player, anyway, he says you need to know his story. He's from Holland. Was adopted into a family, orphaned as a child, adopted, grows into a family in Southern California. You know, by the time he's junior in high school, he's 6'11". Tries out for the basketball team, gets cut. Which I always laugh about, like how bad must you be at 6'11" not to make a high school basketball team, right? You know what I mean? Even if all you do is like lead the layup line, you should be you got to put a 6'11" guy on your team. He tries again as a senior, gets cut again, never plays a minute of high school ball. Starts, but that didn't matter to him because his dream was he wanted to own an auto mechanic shop. So he's going to work for an auto mechanic. 3 years later, he's actually working on a car, has no idea the car he's working on belongs to a local community college coach. The coach told me the story. He said, oh, yeah. I said, I loved it. I walked toward my car that day, and the man lying underneath it had his head out of this end and his feet out of that end. Like he said, I may be a community college guy, but I knew that was big. He pulls now 7 foot tall Swen out from under the car and starts talking to him about basketball. Swen said he had no interest. And the coach said, if you try it one more time, I'll pay for everything for the next 2 years. So Swen goes to this community college. And for the next 2 years, he's on the team and he blossoms. Like sometimes people just happen later. Things happen later for people. He blossoms into one of the top 5 junior college centers in all of America. 7 foot, nice touch around the basket, all this good stuff. The coach says, Swen, you're going to get a chance to go play at the next level at major college basketball. Can I make a call for you to John Wooden? And Swen laughed, like, he didn't make his high school team. Like, why would UCLA want him? They just won 5 straight national championships. The coach calls, he gets Wooden on the line. He says, Coach, it would appear you have a scholarship available. Wooden says, yes. He says, hey, I've got your guy right here. Wooden says, well, why would that be? He says, Coach Wooden, I'm looking at your roster, and here's your problem. He said, um, you've got coming onto your team next year, the varsity, is Bill Walton, best player in America. He's going to be one of the top 3 players in all of America as a sophomore, right off the bat. He's that good. Wooden says, well, thank you for your assessment of Bill's talent. And he says, but Coach Wooden, here's your problem. Bill Walton is 6'11". The next tallest guy on your team is only 6'7", which means there's going to be no one that can challenge Bill Walton, no one who can make him develop and get better, no one who can push him. Coach Wooden, you need my 7-footer to make your 6'11" guy get better every day in practice. And John Wooden said that was it. That's the value. We are better when we're in the company of people who can push us, who can develop us, who can make us better. invites Swen down to the campus, offers him a scholarship, and Swen, went on to play. He was there for 3 years. He redshirted 1 year, played two, and in the 2 years he played, John Wooden was right. He hardly ever played. He only played 3 minutes a game. But when the NBA draft came, they asked Bill Walton, "Who is the best player you played against?" And Bill pointed to Swen Nader, and he said, "For the last year in practice, that guy's been my best opponent." And that year, Swen became the first player in the history of the NBA draft to be a first round draft pick without ever having started a senior college basketball game.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was before high school players could make their way to the league. So he became the first player drafted in the first round, having never started a senior college game. And he went on to play 13 years in the NBA and the ABA. Came back. It's now an amazing business success. But the bottom line is that Swen will tell you he was better because he chose to align himself with a bunch of really amazing people. He surrounded himself with talent, and he became talent to surround him that could surround other people. And in that in that environment, everyone got better.
And to tie it back to the very beginning of this conversation, which we didn't do on purpose, but Swin must have he knew his purpose. My purpose is to be here to push Bill. This is my purpose. This is what he knows his role. I think there's an important component there of I know what I'm doing here. We go back to Warwick Dunn. He knew his purpose. He knew what he was doing, why he was there. I think that there's a component there too.
Yeah, yeah. Swen knew his purpose because Coach Wooden was very clear. He said, "If you come here, you'll hardly ever play, but you're going to get a chance every day to play against the best player in America in practice. You hardly ever get on the game court, but you're going to be an important part of our team." And that was so Swen absolutely knew what he was walking into, and he chose to go to UCLA instead of other places where he could have started probably, because surrounding himself by the best people was really important.
We over meet. What a great teammate. I want to talk about the book for a couple minutes here. So, brand new book. I'm diving into it. It's phenomenal. The New Science of Momentum: How the Best Coaches and Leaders Build a Fire from a Single Spark. It's got stories. It's got science. It's got great methodology. There's a ton. We could do a whole podcast on this. We could do a series of podcasts on this. What's one of your favorite parts of this book when it comes to momentum?
Well, I think the way the book started was during that Super Bowl where the Patriots were behind 28-3, and the next day they win the game. We all remember, but the next day I came in, opened up the whiteboard, wrote, how do we turn a moment into momentum? How does that happen? How do organizations capture moments and do something special with them? And we started an 8 year journey interviewing some of the best leaders in sports, politics, business, and the world of the military to understand how momentum plays a role in success in every one of those verticals. And the best leaders know the most important thing you have to do is prepare for momentum. You have to prepare for a moment. You don't wait on the moment to happen and then suddenly go, well, what do we do with it? You have to prepare for the opportunity. It's why most great coaches, finish off most practices with, "Hey, we're down 9, 40 seconds to go. What do we do?" And you run 40 seconds of clock time practicing how to be ready. Because when you're down 9, 40 seconds to go in a game, you don't want to say, "What do we do, coach?" You want to say, "Oh, we've practiced for this." Momentum is in its own, if you understand it, it's a state of mind, right? Momentum is a mental state. It's a belief system. I believe we're capable of doing something because we're ready for it. And so the best leaders, the thing that I discovered among the great leaders is the amount of work they spend on the front end preparing for sparks, for moments that they don't even know when they're going to occur. So what are you doing? How are you doing it? And if you believe you're ready for the moment, you will be more ready for the moment than most. And that's the thing that really stood out to us as we studied this book.
Yeah, the separation is in preparation. And as a basketball player myself, I know what momentum feels like on the upside or the downside. It's a game.
All been there, baby.
I say that sports are an emotional game full of random events. And sometimes when you get enough random events stacked together, momentum can change the game. You look back, what happened? I don't know. They got on a run, they got momentum. So I loved hearing a book that's dedicated to, I don't think there's anything else like it out there,
No.
on, hey, how do we create momentum? And another part of it is how do we stop momentum? What if we're on the other side of the team? How do we
Yep.
how do we stop momentum? Is that something that maybe we could share, talk a little bit about?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of aspects of it. Much of it is in the same things that we might. One of the things you want to do if you're trying to stop momentum is to remind the organization or the players or the those that you're leading that you've been there before, right? Again, this is a moment where you say, by the way, yeah, I know we got all this craziness happening in our world of business right now, but remember, it was just 5 years ago we dealt with COVID and we made it through that. We're going to be good here. Trust me, we're ready for it. So first thing is a reminder to people that you've been there before. That really helps as a leader to be able to project that. The second is you're looking for small victories and you want to amplify those small victories. You want to make them sound bigger than they are because what you're looking to build, again, remember it's a state of being, right? Momentum is a state of being. So if you're going to do that, you have to get people in the right state. And part of that is leader communications. How are you letting others know? Hey, by the way, look at this. This is exactly what we needed in order to be able to turn this thing around. Old DJ over there just sold the largest tractor we've ever sold. I mean, I'm making stuff up. But the idea being that now we're going to celebrate this moment because it tells everybody else around, oh wow, DJ can do it, I can do it, right? And so the first thing is recognition that you could share that there is a path forward and that you've been there before. It helps. And there isn't almost anything out there that you can't in some way relate to some previous window of time. And so try to point out that we've been here before and then celebrate small victories because that's what you're trying to stack small victories.
It sounds to me, after reading the book and then hearing you now in person here, is how much of momentum comes down to your perspective and how you're able to reframe the moment. The people that can accelerate momentum and stop momentum are the people that can reframe the moment, not make it bigger than it needs to be. That's where you're speaking my language on the mental performance side. Because I'm not saying anything physical. We're not talking about anything physical. We're not talking
Right.
about they just hit four threes in a row. It has nothing to do with that. It's when we call timeout, how do we talk about it? How do we reframe it? That's what excites me the most.
Right. By the way, if they can hit four threes in a row, so can we.
That's right.
Right. And what we know is that if they hit four threes in a row, it's because we didn't really do what we do well. We usually guard the 3-point line really well. That's something we can fix. Are we ready? To the people we have right here, are we ready to go out and fix that? And yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're in. And then, yeah, you're right. It's communications. It's about reframing. It's about creating a set of expectations.
Awesome. Phenomenal book. Don, to close down here, I just want to give a piece of advice or a call to action. And I want to specifically lean in on coaches or leaders that are listening. That's a majority of the people that are tuning in. What piece of advice would you give to a leader or a coach who is destined upon making a transformational impact? That's important to them. They want to make a transformational impact beyond the scoreboard, beyond the salaries, beyond the numbers. What piece of advice, knowing what you know now, being around some of the best leaders and coaches of all time, what piece of advice or call to action would you leave our listeners with today?
I think a big piece of it is, and we've referred to it already, is how do you communicate what's important, right? If all you talk about are the wins and the losses, if all you talk about are, if how you define success is how they'll define success.
Mm.
So be careful in your language, be careful in your wording, because that's what they hear.
How you define success, they'll define success. What a great mic drop. Don, how can my listeners best support you?
Well, hopefully everyone will buy a book, The New Science of Momentum. It's out right now. It's doing really well, and would love to be able to get more of your listeners into the conversation. They can stay in touch with me through website, it's donyaeger.com. because many people spell my last name wrong. I own all spellings of my last name on the internet. So if you make your way there, I'd love to be able to stay in touch. Thank you.
Don, thanks for your time. Thanks for your wisdom. And thank you for your storytelling. You're one of the best I've ever heard. I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me and my listeners today. We all got a little bit better because of you. So thank you.
Thanks, DJ.